My name is Louis, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Bloop project. We're working on one of the fastest growing developer tools on GitHub at the moment, and we're especially excited to talk about large language models and the intersection of AI and developer tools. Our journey starts 2 years ago, so my co-founder Gabriel and myself were both pretty passionate about cutting down on the amount of time we're spending reading code when, what we wanted to be doing was writing lots of code. And we had that typical small company problem, which was, you're leveraging a lot of open source. And when you use open source, often the documentation can be out of date. Things are, get updated and people forget to update the spec. And so we thought, why don't we build a state-of-the-art embedding-based code search engine for open source? And that's what we did. And we had an in-IDE code search engine. You could put in a query like, how do I make a payment? And it would find the most recent version of the Stripe.js library, and it would show you a really concise example of how you can achieve that task. So we worked on that for a bit, and we sort of got pushed by our users more towards internal use cases for code search. So in the last 6 months, 9 months especially, we've been focused on helping engineers within large companies navigate, understand, and move faster in those large code bases. And so this is what we've come up with. So I've got a little demo of the product here. So you can see this is the interface, and you can ask questions of any of the repositories that you've synced with Bloop. And you can see it's a mixture of conversational, ChatGPT-like chat, and we also kind of extend that by bringing out the objects that you're used to when dealing with code, so blocks of code, or the file system, or diffs. And I've got one more demo to show you as well. We really think about the interface of this as fusing the best of ChatGPT with the best of what you can get in an IDE. And here's another example that showcases some of those qualities. So here the user's asking for examples of the GitHub Auth API. And you can see in this case, it's decided that the most useful thing to retrieve is 3 functions from 2 different files, as well as the directory listing for the web server folder. So you can imagine if you're a new developer coming into Codebase, being assigned a ticket, you would need to spend a significant amount of time reading up and finding, okay, well, how is this structured? But with Bloop, you could just immediately get an overview of what you're supposed to be doing. So I think we think a lot about what it means to kind of scale code bases beyond just your laptop and you as an individual or you working in a small startup. And really, in the same way that CDEs solve post-laptop scale code bases from an infrastructure and development point of view, I think there's a good analogy that we can apply to post-laptop scale reading of code as well. What happens when you've got thousands of engineers working on a code base and suddenly basically nobody in the organization has been able to read the entire code base because it's so large. And so if you can make CDs ephemeral, make it easy to jump between different pull requests and context switch and easily get started by reducing all of the infrastructure needed to actually run the project, I think the analogy here is, well, what if you could also do away with a lot of that burden that comes with trying to understand the code before you work on a project? So, we all know that most of the job of being a software developer is not actually writing code, it's reading code. And so what if when you switch to a new pull request, you can immediately get a summarization of what is going on and how that pull request interacts with other files in your code base? Or if you're working on a new task, you could get, in the context of the code base, you can put in the task description and it'll easily find, okay, well, here's all the relevant sections that you should be looking at. And in my own personal day-to-day, I get assigned 3 or 4 things every morning to review. And so, I'm doing a huge amount of context switching. And especially in that sort of flow, I think Bloop and CDEs working together is able to kind of deliver, enables me to be able to deliver probably about twice as much review as previously possible. And it just leads to less time being wasted, going down rabbit holes, reading things that are irrelevant, and all the rest of it. So the benefits to leadership are also pretty clear. I mean, it's not just about me as an individual moving faster. I think it's also as leaders within organizations, you want your developers to be as portable as possible. So that means if we've got 1,000 engineers and each of them kind of has a specialization at the moment within that, a part of the code base that they're responsible for, maybe you have a code owners file to even code that in the repo. What happens if a new business objective comes in? It's not so easy at the moment to move resource from the lower priority areas to higher priority areas. But if switching context and getting up to speed with the code base becomes as simple as putting in a description of what you're trying to achieve, and the AI can go and figure all the context out for you, does that make your engineers much more portable? And does that mean it increases your response time to deliver new objectives that come in? So I think there's good benefits both to leadership and to the individual of why this could be considered. So one of the things and one of the reasons I'm here speaking to you all at Gitpod is CD Universe is that we've done an integration recently that takes Bloop beyond just search, and actually we're starting to dip our toe into writing code, and that comes with a lot of questions about the role of the developer in the process when AI is almost end-to-end, taking a task off the stack, doing a first pass of it, and if it's good enough, getting deployed. And so I'm just going to talk through a really real example here of where I found this to be useful. So yesterday I got this email from one of our users, and it's always nice to get feedback, but this was a mixture of feedback and a bug report. So you can see the user says, when I first got in, connected a repo, and then got this pop-up, and they had an issue with one of the pop-ups that you get when you go through our onboarding process. And what I was able to do, because actually our front-end developer, we're a small team, we're about 7 people at the moment. We only have one front-end developer, and they're on holiday, just gone on holiday. They'll be back in about 2.5 weeks. So my options to solve this problem are like, basically I solve it myself, or it doesn't get solved for 2.5 weeks. So what I did is I put the question to Bloop. I said, where is the front-end loading previously selected repo during the local repo onboarding? To be honest, I can't really understand my own writing. I think that's kind of a bit, jumbled up. But anyway, ChatGPT was able to figure out what was going on. Anyway, the LLM was able to figure out what was going on and gave me the precise answer, which is that in this component here, we basically read and write the state of this onboarding step. And so my task, therefore, was to remove that. So what did I do? I asked Bloop to make a diff to show how somebody can change this file so we don't save or recall the chosen folder. And here's the result. You can see that it's gone ahead. It's removed the part of one file and also part of another file there as well. And what you get at the end of that is the ability not to deploy the change directly to production, because that would be very dangerous, right? You definitely should not be putting changes that LLM has start to end written straight into production, but we're able to open it in Gitpod. So Bloop in the background, the agent is creating a new branch and saving the changes to that branch, and that makes it really easy to open up in a CDE. And so I was able to open up the changes. There was like a linting error. I fixed that. We deployed the change, and I could go back to the user same day and say, it's been patched, look out for the next release. And there's something so powerful about, being able to go from reading about an issue, solving the issue, checking it, and basically deploying it all within the same sitting, end to end. It would have taken less than 20 minutes to perform. And there it is, the first pull request ever created end to end by Bloop, which we're very proud of. And so one thing that I realize is that was just pictures, and I actually took those screenshots post-fact because at the time I was just thinking about solving the issue, and I wasn't thinking, wow, what an also demo for CD Universe. So anyway, here it is again. And this time it's a slightly different change. I actually decided I was going to add a banner to say that we are at the conference. And so you can see this is on the website repo that we have for our website. It searches through a few different files, it finds the right components to change. And then it goes ahead and creates the diff. And what I get is the ability to stage the change, commit the stage change, preview in Gitpod, and then that opens up. And the rest of it is your normal development flow. And there we go. You can see the banner has been added. But this is why you need to check the changes, because actually that blue is not the right blue to use. So in this example, I then went back and changed the blue to be slightly different. And then it was ready to commit. And so if you're still at CD Universe, you'll be able to go to the website and see the change live. And so I've got a couple of slides. I won't spend too much time on this because it's really a topic, I think, for another talk. And you go to a lot of depth here, but really our role is feeding the most relevant context to large language models like GPT-4. So, our original approach was very much you get a user's question, you run a semantic search over the code base, and you retrieve relevant examples. Then you combine the user's question with that context, and GPT-4 generates an answer. This is a pretty common way of doing things. That was a fixed pipeline, if you like. And what we've moved to is an agent model where we define a few different ways in which Bloop the agent can interact with other code search tools that we expose, like code search, path search, the ability to look at diffs and branches and commits. And so we basically iteratively prompt the model with the output of a tool that it's chosen, and then it chooses the next tool. And so what you do is you build up basically the context, and the agent is choosing at each turn which context it still needs to get to answer the question. But there's still, if we think about what the biggest challenges for Bloop are at the moment, it's all about the length of the prompt and how much information the model can take into account when it's making decisions at any given time. And so, we just ran a quick chart on our repo, and you can see there's a significant number of files that are too big to fit inside a single prompt. And so we spend a huge amount of time really summarizing code, finding smart ways to compress the code base in ways that the LLM can understand. And I just want to end on I guess, a thought, which is, if these tools seem awesome, that's great. If these tools seem a bit rough around the edges, I would just say, just look at the progress that we've had. If you think of the only production scale developer productivity tool that was end-to-end, pushing changes on its own, was really Dependabot, right? And where we've gone is the development of that to AI that can arbitrarily, if you stick it in a loop, perform basically a huge number of code tasks in such a short amount of time. And I don't think we need to wait another 5 years to see the next huge productivity increase or see these tools mature. I think it'll be a lot shorter than that. But I'm incredibly optimistic about the opportunity that's in front of us. And yeah, just want to end on that note. Thanks for having me.